From Casey finally proposing to Brett at the end of season 11 to fans hoping that Brettsy will be endgame, here's why Chicago Fire fans need Brett to say yes to Casey. The show aired its 11th season back in 2022, and it ended on a huge cliffhanger that left everyone on edge, specifically the whole Brettsy situation. To jog up your memory, Matt Casey basically came back to Chicago in the last episode of the season and asked Sylvie Brett to marry him. It was super overdue and totally worth the wait. But the problem is, the showrunners cruelly didn't give us anything else. You have to understand, though, that this proposal alone is a huge thing, considering how Casey permanently left Chicago in season 10. The only time we saw him after that was at Kelly Severide and Stella Kidd's wedding, and doing a couple of projects with the Department of Homeland Security Task Force. You best believe that every time Matt appeared on the show, the tension between him and Brett reached epically new heights. But now that Casey went ahead and proposed to Sylvie, fans are going crazy over how she'd respond. Will she say yes or just straight up decline? Because, let's face it, this has been coming for a long time now, and the showrunners better think twice before planning their future in the upcoming season, because even the fans think that they're playing with their emotions. But before I get into all the deets, let's talk a bit about why the couple even broke up in the first place. Well, it all started when Matt decided to move to Oregon to be a stand-in parent for his late teammate Andy Darden's two sons. In the show's 200th episode, the pair said their heartfelt goodbyes, and Casey said that he always wants him and Brett to be exactly like how they are now. With that, they decided to give long distance a try, and it did work for a while. But when they both reunited at Severide and Kidd's wedding, they realized that the whole long-distance thing had taken a huge toll on both of them, which is something I think everyone can relate to. While they were dancing during the wedding reception, the couple talked about how long they could keep this going, to which Casey said that he doesn't know. But right now at this moment, they're together and it's all that matters. I'd melt if someone said that to me. The pair tried their best to make it work, with love letters, long-distance visits, as well as infinite phone calls. But unfortunately, things didn't work out for them, and Sylvie broke up with Matt at the start of season 11. She said that maybe their stars were never meant to align. This line pretty much broke every fan's heart, who were rooting for the couple to be endgame, and what made matters even worse was the fact that during season 11, Brett actually starts going out with someone else. You see, while she and Violet were in the hospital, they run into this handsome stranger, who just happens to be volunteering there, owns a bar, and even shares Brett's fear of clowns. Talk about the universe working its magic. But the first two pieces of information immediately click in Violet's head, and she realizes that the dude might not be a complete stranger. Violet asks him if he knows Evan Hawkins, to which he says yes. And this is the moment where we get introduced to Dylan, the same guy Evan and Violet had tried setting Sylvie up with in the starting episodes of season 11. I refuse to believe that was a coincidence, but oh well. Dylan later asks Brett out on a date, and even though Sylvie's a little hesitant, rightfully so because she had just broken up with Casey, she eventually says yes. No, Brett, you were supposed to say no. Anyways, they go on a couple of dates together, but Brett eventually calls the whole thing off, out of fear that she just isn't ready for something serious yet. But a while later, she realizes that she can't always live in the shadow of that fear, and she tries to make up with Dylan by coming clean to him about her reservations and how now she's down for anything with him. Dylan's reluctant in taking her back, but he eventually caves in. Fortunately for us fans, though, even that makeup is short-lived. So what went wrong? You see, while working on a case, Brett comes across a baby that was given up for adoption, and she feels this strong pull toward her. But there's a reason for that. The thing is, Sylvie herself was given up for adoption by her mother, which makes her feel like she needs to take care of this baby, and eventually decides that she wants to adopt her. This is pretty much where things go downhill because this whole adoption thing makes Dylan realize that the two of them are on completely different pages. And what does he do? He breaks up with her. Guess what happens next? Well, the minute Casey gets wind of this, he realizes that he's still not over Sylvie. And like a knight in shining armor, he shows up at her doorstep at the end of the episode with a ring in his hand and proposes to Brett. Honestly, nothing could have prepared me for how beautiful this moment was going to be. And the only thing standing in their way now is Sylvie's response. Will she say yes? Chances are she might. Okay, so hear me out. We know that Casey's all for raising a family with Brett because he's always been interested in having one of his own. And there's nothing in this world that'd make him more happy than to help raise the baby Brett wants to adopt. You've got a father of the year kind of man wanting to start a family with you. What more could a woman want? I mean, just look at how readily he took those two boys under his wing. And if Matt and Sylvie end up together, they'll be the perfect family. Despite all this though, there's still one teeny tiny problem: the distance. It's what broke them up in the first place. But Casey did tell Kid that while the whole distance thing can be hard, once you get back together, it doesn't really matter. So is that a clear sign that Brettsey will actually end up being together? Can't say anything for sure until the 12th season comes out. But if she says yes, there's another problem waiting to rile up fans even more. See, we all know that Casey's currently in Oregon raising his late teammate's two boys, so if Brett were to get married to him, she'd have to pack her bags and move all the way to Oregon herself. But this means that her character would have to be permanently written off the show, kinda like Casey's was when he left in season 10. And since Kara Kilmer, the actress who plays Brett, hasn't said anything about leaving the show, I don't think that'll happen, because if the studio decides to take that route, they'll receive an insane amount of backlash, and they've gotten enough of that already. The other alternative would be for Matt to move back to Chicago. But considering how Casey made a multiple-year deal to raise the two boys, if he moves back, it'll make him look like he doesn't care much about the kids. Besides that, Jesse Spencer, the actor who plays Matt Casey, has always been all in for making on and off appearances on the show, but his character moving back to Chicago would mean that he'll have to become a permanent member of the cast again. This seems highly unlikely, considering how he hasn't made any significant appearances on the show, and even Spencer hasn't said anything about coming back to the set, which means that this little ray of hope that we were given might be taken away from us. But despite all this, the fans still haven't lost hope that Brettsey will be endgame. I mean, just look at how they reacted when Casey proposed to Brett. One fan tweeted saying that the studio has some nerve leaving us hanging like that, but they're sure that Brett will definitely say yes. You and me both, man, because at this point, you gotta admit, it's hard to think about one without the other. Another fan reacted by saying that the proposal was so freaking sweet, and they really hope that Brettsey ends up together for good this time. Amen to that! But at the end of the day, whether the two end up together or not depends hugely on what the showrunners have in mind for the couple. They could very well give them the ending fans want, or introduce a completely new plot twist. So there you have it, folks. From fans being hopeful that Brettsey will definitely be endgame, to Casey finally proposing to Brett at the end of the 11th season, this was all on why Chicago Fire fans need Brett to say yes to Casey.